Hi, welcome to flexiWAN Academy. Today we started muted, so I apologize for that. So let me go one step back. So for today, we're covering firewall fundamentals. To cover lesson agenda, we're going to be doing introduction to firewall and security firewall and the concept behind it. We're going to cover device-specific firewall rules, firewall policies, and finally, we're going to show how both device-specific rules and firewall policies work and use application identifications. So let's get started. So as always, I like to start the documentation with our documentation pages. And my suggestion is to definitely, after watching this video, to take a look and spend some time in our documentation pages, because we go in depth and offer practical examples and use cases for every single firewall aspect. Also, as a treat for our viewers, we're going to be demoing a brand new flexiWAN and flexiManage version, which basically has many new UI improvements, which are coming out very soon, likely this month. So let's get started. I'm going to just switch to the inventory, where we have three devices, demo devices, that we're going to be using for our webinar. So let's talk about the firewall. So security firewall functionality is included with flexiWAN starting from the version 4.2. The idea behind the firewall concept is to make it easy to deploy and at a large scale. The firewall offers flexible controls to filter all or certain traffic using several different criteria, such as application identifications. But at the same time, the idea is that it covers the filtering features such as inbound and outbound firewall rules, that it offers enterprise features such as like port forwarding and one-to-one NAT. Lastly, firewall itself is stateless and ACL based. So there are three key components with the firewall. And we're going to navigate here to the firewall section. The first component is policies. This is where one can configure and deploy firewall configuration on multiple FlexiEdge sites at once, which means basically that you can configure a bunch of firewall rules within one policy and then deploy the same policy on one or thousands of devices in just a few clicks. The other component are device-specific firewall rules. And if we go to a specific, so for example, to a device, and if you go to firewall tab, it offers firewall rules specific to this device. So each device can have both specific firewall rules and also policy. And we'll talk about that a bit later in the video. So these site-specific rules are used even without policy. We offer a bunch of different approaches to achieve maximum security with this, by combining both firewall rules that are local and also policies. And finally, the third component, which is used for our firewall, is actually traffic and app identifications. So traffic and app identifications is a built-in database with IP ranges of a well-known services and popular applications and their ports. And with an option to add your own custom app identifications. So this is used also, app identifications are also used with path selection. So basically multiple features in flexiWAN rely on app identifications. So this is a built-in database which we maintain and update all the time, which has list of popular ranges and services. For example, Cloudflare, if I was to expand it, you can see that it lists all the ranges that are used with Cloudflare and shows a bunch of pages here. So moving back, let's talk a little bit about the firewall itself, what can be done. And for this example, I'll talk a little bit on this page, but it's really applies for both device-specific rules and also for the policies. So the features itself from the firewall are that you have ability to allow or deny specific firewall rules. We include outbound rules and inbound rules as a way to do filtering. And we suggest using firewall policies to configure and deploy firewall rules on a mass scale, which we'll be also covering a bit later. Basically, that's it. Let's just get started. But before we actually start, I want to cover a brief terminology, talk about the terminology of the firewall, so you can easily listen to this video. So firewall rule defines what kind of traffic is filtered, whether allowed or blocked, and its direction, whether it's outgoing or inbound. And what's outbound? Outbound traffic means all outgoing traffic, meaning all traffic that is starting from LAN towards WAN. And inbound traffic is all incoming traffic starting from WAN towards LAN or the edge itself. Destination, and actually let me open this just to make things easier. So the destination, app/destination, defines the destination of the traffic using traditional approach where you use any IP port and protocol, as well as additional destinations using chaff and app identifications, but we'll cover that later. The source itself also means originating traffic. Again, we can use custom IP or custom IP or traffic name or any source. So traffic name itself, which you will be seeing a lot in this video, is a filter. It allows you to filter traffic using application identification. For example, which the example we'll be showing later in the video is in the webinar, is that you can filter Facebook ranges or ports used by specific application. Traffic tags is a feature that allows you to also use a traffic and app identification, but the categories. With specific categories, and I'll cover that in later also. And finally, for inbound, the terminology that you need to know is basically the types of inbound rules, which is the port forwarding, which allows basically forward to internal specific ports traffic from the WAN side. You forward specific ports to the LAN side to a specific device, and also one-to-one NAT, which allows you to map an external IP, or external WAN IP to internal resources. So all ports, like for example, if you have a web server or something, or any kind of resource that you want to expose to the internet, you just do one-to-one NAT. And of course, the final option, which we'll be covering a lot more in the later in the video, is this FlexiEdge access, which means everything that's related to the WAN side of the device of the FlexiEdge itself. So let's get started. Basically, I wanted to, this webinar is more of a hands-on approach. So to get started, let's talk about outbound rules. So and for the purpose of this, I have a machine that is just a regular, Linux device that, at the moment has internet. So if I do ping google.com, everything should be working fine and responding. And this is just going to be a client that we're going to use just to show you how if the firewall is indeed blocking or not. So the first thing that we're going to do is, explain how outbound rules work. So, and as said previously, so we have device-specific rules, and there's also policies, which include a bunch of firewall rules, where you can define a number of firewall rules. And then you can deploy those rules on one machine. So the idea behind policies is that you don't have to have every time you bring up a new site, you don't have to manually configure all the rules. Instead, you create a company-wide policy, and then, like for example, like this one, which has a bunch of blocked things or allowed, doesn't matter. We'll cover that also later. And you can then send this policy to one or thousands of devices at the same time. And it saves you a lot of time with this approach. So moving forward, going back to devices. So one moment, I apologize. So yeah, so moving forward, let's go to discuss, to show you basically the outbound rules. So let's make first example. When you click on a plus sign on the outbound rules, it's going to show you the default dialog window, and by default the destination it assumes that this is for outgoing traffic, meaning from the LAN to out somewhere else, either WAN or tunnel, doesn't matter, depends where you wish to block or allow the traffic. And by default the custom IP, the traditional custom IP port and protocol is selected. So here in this area, in this section, you can define an IP address and its mask which you wish to allow or block. In this case, we're going to be blocking. Protocol it uses. By default, we offer ICMP, TCP, and UDP. You can select each or all three. And finally, the port range. So the port range to specific the port range to specific IP. And the way it works is, you can, even if you click here, basically you can even start and say, SSH. It's very advanced. So you can even, if you don't know specific port, we can try to type. Trying to figure out. Basically, we have a bit bigger list. It pulls data from our traffic and app identifications, but you can, can block or allow telnet and so on, or you can do a combination. If you say I want to use a specific, port range, for example, like this. However, for the purpose of this, example, so let's say we want to block a specific IP, and the specific IP that we wish to block is 999. Which is the quad 9 DNS. So of course, I'm not saying block quad 9 DNS, it's a very good DNS, but it's a good example because I don't use it anywhere else for this machine. So if I first try to ping 999, of course, you can see it's working. And I'll keep this pinging in the background. So here, let's define 999. And if you try to add the rule now, it's not gonna allow you because you need to also define the range. And finally, the ports, the protocols that you wish to block. In this case, I don't want to block only ICMP. I want to block everything. So let's block ICMP, TCP, and UDP. And finally, you can, but you don't have to. If you have multiple interfaces, LAN interfaces, you can just keep this empty, and then it's going to apply to all. But here, I just have a single WAN interface. And under action, I'm going to deny. So this is the destination part. But the source part is any. So here, the purpose of this, for the purpose of this example, we're showing you that here we are going to block traffic originating from anywhere, which means that if device has tunnels, which this device indeed has, in its routing table, it has other sites, and if you create a path selection policy, which we talked about in the previous webinars, you can route specific traffic sites through another sites using tunnel. So what you can do here, you can limit this rule for only specific IP range as originating, as for the source or originator, or you can just allow any. In this case, we can say any. So I don't want anything that's going outside this device to be able to reach this IP. And the action is deny. And I'm going to click add rule. Of course, when you add the rule, it's going to show you here on a nice little table. And under rule action, you can actually disable the rule, edit its settings. And what we'll later also cover, you can also edit its priority. And finally, duplicate and delete the rule. That's basically what's possible. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to click update device. But before I click, I want you to get ready, to be ready. Basically, because it works really fast. Even though considering we're managing this device from flexiManage, which is our central management platform, and then every change we make goes down the API to Flexi agent, and the agent implements the change that we made. So I'm going to now click update device, and the moment I click update device, it's already blocking it. We sent the job down the API, using API down to the device, and this device pings if stop 999 has stopped responding, and that's it. Basically, it's already working. It's blazing fast, and it automatically blocks. It blocks that automatically. We configured it to block 999. So if I was to just disable this rule and then click update device, and if we go here back again, and lightning fast is going to allow 999 traffic. And this is also an example how you can also disable specific rules. So moving to our next example. So we've shown you just now how to block outgoing traffic using using a specific IP. However, I now want to focus on traffic tags and traffic name. However, before we do that, I want to show you basically I want to focus a little bit on traffic and app identifications page. And this is from where the traffic names and traffic tags categories are pulled from. So as said, this is a built-in database of predefined application identifications, which are basically popular external services such as Cloudflare or Netflix YouTube, Facebook, Google, and also popular applications such as, or ports that popular applications use, for example, BGP, BitTorrent, Cisco VPN, and so on, and FTP and so on. So basically, the way you need to consider it is, this list here is every single item in this list is usable to you can filter, use it for filtering with firewall rules. And but even so, we here offer built-in identifications, app identifications. However, you can create even your own custom app identifications. For example, here I created a custom application identification for egress filtering, and that's an example that I'm going to cover later in the video, which basically shows you how to block, how to do more secure approach. Egress filtering is basically used to block or to allow only specific ports for outgoing traffic. So basically, you don't want devices, all the LAN side, to have access to all ports. You can just block block everything, and then just allow only specific ports that are necessary for communications, email, and chat, and so on. Yeah. So, but we'll cover that in a bit later. So let's go here. And here for firewall, go back. So now we added the rule. Let's allow the rule that we're basically blocking 999. And let's move forward with the second option, which is that we want to use, again, similar example. We want to deny traffic for LAN interface, but we want to deny traffic to a specific application. In this case, let's block Facebook. And for source, we're just going to do, again, any, because it's not really relevant. You pick the LAN side. You want to use the LAN interface. But if it wasn't selected, then in this case, any would even include the tunnel traffic that's coming or from the other end of the tunnel. But here, you just click this. And so Facebook. And I'm going to add the rule. Again, don't forget, you can add the rule, but until you click update device, it's not effective. So here, before we do that, we left pinging here 999. So let's ping facebook.com. Of course, it's responding and working. So let's click this, update device. And if that's it, it's already blocking. Facebook is now being blocked. And if I try again, this client no longer can access Facebook. So this covers basically the traffic ID. And finally, the last option that we allow is traffic tags, which is basically a combination of a single category to filter, to allows you to filter using a single category or using app ID category, and or combining them. So for example, you can block whole ranges of app identifications, like for example, collaboration. So let's double check what's collaboration. Let's go here. And if you can actually, if you expand this list, and if you do it like this. So collaboration includes, Live Messenger, Google services, protocol for chat, Facebook, Telegram, Twitter. But you can also, just so you know, you can also modify and change any other combination or any other app identifications that you feel like should be in specific categories. So you can change them and add them in a different, or you can even create your own category. And so the idea behind traffic tags is that these three categories here: the category itself, the app ID category, its service class, and importance can be used for filtering. So in this case, if we go back to the device firewall, we can say we want to use traffic tag, and here you can allow or deny email or internet, or like for example, peer-to-peer. Which in this case is like BitTorrent and sharing services that you usually want to block. However, you don't have to. You can even say you can use a specific other service class, category, or importance. You can allow or deny low or medium or high importance traffic. In this case, let's just use as an example for traffic tag. Let's block traffic, file sharing, any kind of peer-to-peer seems like much better. Peer-to-peer. So in this case, we're going to click deny traffic tags. add rule. And here in this case, also just to edit it again, so deny, this is applying to all interfaces that are going to allow, actually make a change to only allow LAN side. And that's it, we click update. And to see what we blocked actually here, if we go here, category, and if we expand peer-to-peer, BitTorrent, of course, we blocked BitTorrent, but you can also block remote access, for example, which may be even better for some companies. So moving back, now we have, this, as you can see here, we are now adding firewall rules. And every time you add a firewall rule, you can have it in this neat little table. And now it comes to the priorities page. So here we are. I want to make an example of basically how priorities work. We process the rules from the bottom to up. So the last rule, the rule on the top always has priority over the rule below it. So here we block 999 in this rule. So if I was to, block, if I was to ping 999, you can see that I cannot ping it. However, let's just duplicate the rule, and also to show you how to duplicate rules. And of course, you can add, you can add a description. And here we're going to allow. So it's the same rule as the top one, but it's allowing to LAN side, it's allowing to ping 999. However, if I click update now and try here, nothing will happen. Why? Because I said previously, the rules, the top rule has higher priority than the bottom rule, and you can drag and drop the rule to be on top like this, or you can, use these arrows. Actually, these rules are to add a rule below or above. This is useful when you have a bunch of rules. When you want to create a rule above the specific rule or below it, but to actually do priorities a prioritization, you must drag and drop the rule. So in this case, we are going to allow to make the rule that allows a pinging 999 in front of the rule that blocks 999. If I click here, that's it. Now we're allowing pings, and this is basically a very simple example of how rules priority work. And this is going to be this is going to be used for egress filtering, which I intend to show also later. So yeah, we covered, I believe, all outbound rules. The only actually the type of the destination we didn't cover, the any destination, because you can say, here you can get creative. This is, traditional firewall approach. Basically, you can say any local IP is allowed. You can block a specific IP, for example, I think it's 10, which is LAN range, it is 10/100. With any range, deny access to the internet. So this way, like deny spam device. So in this case, like we are preventing a device from the LAN side to access a specific to access internet or anything. But we're not going to do this for this example now. So moving forward, let's cover inbound rules. So what are inbound rules? We covered, we said basically for the terminology, inbound, it covers all incoming traffic that is starting from WAN, coming from WAN and going towards LAN or any resources behind flexiWAN, or also to FlexiEdge device itself. And this is the first example that we're going to cover. So the type, under type, you decide which kind of firewall rule type you want to use. So this FlexiEdge access is focused on traffic that arrives to the edge itself. So the traffic, so basically, if you want to allow access to SSH access to the FlexiEdge itself, or if you want to allow access to the FlexiEdge UI, this is the category, the type that you use. So for example, in here, we want to allow SSH, and you can type SSH, select TCP from source that can be any or custom IP or custom even name, which is basically you can define custom, like for example, in this case, what we can do is we can, and let's actually do that as an example. Let's create a traffic and app identification, which is called company ranges. And oops, sorry. As an example, let's see what Google ranges. So yeah, let's company ranges, all company. Let's use the category remote access, service class, default, importance, very important. And let's add an actual identification within this rule. And let's say that, this is a Google range, and let's add, let's pretend that this is all company ranges, external company ranges. And we can add this rule here. And we can finally add and by the way, notice that I didn't add any ports, which means all. It includes all ports and protocols. So the first thing that you must know is that when you add the new app identification, this section on the top will pop up and say some devices are not updated. Click to update it. This database, every time we alter and make changes or create new app identifications, you have to send it the changes to the device, and it's going to update all the devices. And here you can see that it's already updating. Some are already updated. So basically here, let's move back to our example where we want to allow inbound access for, we want to create two rules. The first will be, do we want to allow SSH access to this device? And the second rule will be, we want to allow flexiEdge UI access to this device. So again, we must keep this flexiEdge access. WAN interface, we choose the WAN interface. This device has multiple WANs, so we're going to use the default one, the primary one. And for protocols, we're going to use TCP. And and description, let's add allow remote access from specific company range. And here under source, I'm going to, if I click just on it, it's going to show you two available application identifications in this case, which is company ranges. That's it. I'm going to add a rule. Here it is. This rule now allows access from specific external IPs, SSH access from specific external IPs to this firewall, into this flexiWAN firewall. And this is a port 22, so SSH. So let's also duplicate this rule, and let's also add another rule. Remote access, allow flexiEdge UI access from specific company ranges, and keep everything else as is. So now this device, all specific remote ranges can access this device using SSH or port 8080, and you just send the changes down the train, and then that's it. Basically, it's gonna take a few moments, and the device will now be accessible. But yeah, that shows basically the example of the inbound rule to WAN. However, flexiWAN also supports two other types of the inbound rules, which is actually I have to go to inbound section, yeah, which is basically port forwarding. So the port forwarding basically allows you to forward specific WAN IP ports, specific traffic from WAN to internal resources on LAN. Doesn't even have to be on LAN. You can do port forwarding from site A to the LAN client that is connected via tunnel to on site B. So that's also possible. Keep that in mind. But here we're going to make a much easier and a nicer, shorter example, just for the sake of making things easy to understand. And this allows you to define a ports range. Again, we support specific port range or from and to. In this case, you can say we want port range 8888, only protocol TCP, source any, to come to the internal IP, which is, let's check what's our ifconfig, what's our IP, 10.1. So yeah, because 10.10 is the LAN IP. So in this case, 10.1, And internal port, you can keep 888, but in this case, it's actually going to be 8000, for example. So maybe this is a web server, and web server port forward. And you click add. And this is an example, so basically, of how port forwarding works. And in this case, the device. Finally, and I'm going to remove this just to not make conflict. Finally, I want to show you one more example of inbound rule, which is the one-to-one NAT. I'm removing the previously created rule because we don't want to create a conflict. We are going to use one-to-one NAT. And you can choose an IP or external, or you can choose one or multiple WAN interfaces, depending how many you have. Actually, specifically one interface, or you cannot use multiple interfaces, but you can choose between the interfaces that you have, WAN interfaces. And you can map all traffic from external IP that this flexiWAN has to internal IP. And in this case, we're going to enable one-to-one NAT to any web server. It can be anything. So we're mapping every whole traffic, and you click update, and yeah, that's it. This is how we work. So to recap, to summarize, we talked about outbound rules and inbound rules. We talked about what's allowed for outbound rules, meaning that how we can deny or allow specific traffic using outbound rules. We covered using the IP or using application ID categories to allow or deny specific traffic. And for outbound rules, we also showed prioritization, how rule priorities work. The same rule priorities also apply, by the way, to the inbound rules. As for inbound rules, we covered how you can allow specific access to how you can allow access from specific IP external ranges to the firewall to access SSH or any kind of resource running on the firewall itself, as such as Edge UI or SSH. And we also covered port forwarding from WAN side to LAN side, forward for specific or port range, then finally we covered also one-to-one NAT, how you can map external IP to internal device. So this covers the device-specific rules. However, we haven't talked about the policies, and this is because deliberately I wanted to explain how the rules work, how it all can be combined, and then to explain how we can to move forward, we want to cover the firewall policies. So as you can see here, we have one device, and we covered all the firewall rules for it. We configured all the device-specific rules. So now we have two more devices, and this device does not have any firewall rules. So again, I would have to manually add, allow, deny, do all kinds of firewall rules for this device, and then move on to the second device, and so on. So as you can see, this can be a very repetitive process. And for that purpose, we created security policies, firewall policies, and you can have multiple firewall policies in your, in your account, and then you can install these policies on each device. And you can have specific policies to specific devices, or you can have like a company policy, like for example, a company-wide policy, which blocks specific traffic to specific ranges, doesn't matter, or even you can even create inbound rules. But there's a small caveat. When using global policies, you can only decide filter inbound traffic to WAN interface, meaning to all interfaces that the FlexiEdge device has. It's WAN. You cannot do port forwarding or one-to-one NAT using global rules. For this, you have to have device-specific rules. And this is because obviously you cannot, you're deploying one policy to many devices. Every device has its own different IP. So for the purpose of that, you must define always port forwarding or one-to-one NAT specifically on each device as device-specific rules. But without to make things easier, flexiWAN supports both device-specific rules and policies on the same device. So this helps you, to combine these two rule types. So basically, we here have a device policy, company-wide policy. And it works. You can see that the layout is very familiar to path selection. If you go here to traffic optimization path selection, you can see that they are pretty much the same way it works, and the same layout. And here we are going to, on this firewall page, we're going to be installing the main policy, which I've now just shown, to one or two devices. And here you can see that this policy is blocking Facebook, Netflix, remote access for outgoing traffic, meaning that you don't want any desk or any third-party services to work to manage your devices, and peer-to-peer and BitTorrent traffic ID and so on. So here, before we do that, I just want to I will delete some rules. So for inbound rules, I'll keep I'll delete port forwarding, I'll delete peer-to-peer, Facebook, and I'll keep the blocking 999. So let's update data center. So if we go here now, and if you go to firewall rules, you can see that the company-wide policy is not installed anywhere. And actually no other policies installed anywhere as well. And if you click on the device here on any empty space on the name, you can actually expand and to understand the rule and compare multiple rules at the same time. So moving back here, let's install the policy that we set that we want to install. So to do that, you just select a device on which you can install it. You can, and it's the same way. You can select all devices, or you can select one device in your organization, and you click on install policy. And from there, you can pick, firewall policy, and in our case, main policy. And finally, confirm by saying yes. The job is added, and you can actually see the job here that's sent to the specific device. And if you go now to data center site, if you go to firewall rule, we now have a combination of policies and device-specific rules. So here you can see that this device now allows remote management from specific company ranges, port 22 and 8080, and blocks traffic to Facebook, Netflix, remote access, peer-to-peer, BitTorrent, and also blocks to 999 as our example. However, if you're troubleshooting, or if you just don't want to use any device-specific rules, what you can do is you can disable device-specific rules. And for purpose of that, so let's go ping 999, which now allows. And if I disable device-specific rules, in a few moments, it's going to allow me to ping. Yeah, as you can see, it's allowing me to ping 999. So yeah, you can combine. Basically, you can combine or disable device-specific rules. One thing to point out, you can see that the icons for device-specific rules and global rules are different. This means that you cannot really you cannot edit global rules on each device. You have to edit it on a policy. But what's good is you can add additional traffic name, and you can say, let's use TeamViewer. Doesn't matter. Let's deny TeamViewer for any. And so now what I'm doing is I'm editing a global policy that's already installed, and I'm going to click save and update devices, and the job will be sent to this original data center device, because it has installed the TeamViewer, and it's automatically going to inherit all the changes that we make. So basically, you can install policy only once, but then you can edit it on many devices, and it's going to you can edit the policy, global policy, and any changes that you make are automatically going to be sent to each device. So you don't have to reinstall policy every single time. And also to finally say regarding the policies is, one device can have a single policy installed, but you can have multiple policies for multiple groups of devices and so on. As you can see, I have, some testing policies here. And for example, egress filtering, which I'm going to show you also in a few moments. You can have a policy for egress filtering. That's an example that I've promised to cover. So basically this policy is a very simple policy, which basically allows all traffic. But although right now it's actually the opposite way, it needs to be like this. So yeah, we didn't actually. I didn't configure it yet. No, it wasn't the opposite way. It was the grid way. Yeah. So basically, the traffic is denied from. If we added this rule, by default rule block everything, but on top you add a rule which allows any outgoing traffic, but using only egress ports. So what are egress ports? Let's cover that. So the egress ports is this custom policy which contains all the popular ports, all the ports requires for normal internet communication, but and no other ports will be allowed other than these ports. And these ports are used, for in most cases, for websites and email sending and regular user communication. And most of the communication is, happens via SSL, and which I see that I think missing. Yeah, so let's add also port 443. So 443 was missing, and actually, is it also missing port 80? Yeah, it is. So yeah, we're also this is an old policy that I had, so probably I didn't. So we're going to allow port 80, port 443, and other ports used for SMTP, IMAP, and so on, for email authentication and sending emails. And again, because we edited the policy, because we edited the custom application identification, you have to send the update to the devices. So here, I showed you how to install the policy, because we now want to install another policy. We're not going to uninstall an existing policy, because we want to actually show you the functionality of flexiWAN, which is that it allows you to actually override a policy. So let's go back here. And so the main policy is installed on this device, on the data center device, and it has, it's blocking Facebook, Netflix, remote access, and so on. If you go one step back, the egress policy is a bit different. So it by default, the lower rule uses the prioritization feature. So the lower rule is blocking all traffic towards anything from any port, everything. And the top rule, the rule with higher priority, allows all traffic, but only using specific egress ports that we defined just now in the traffic and app identifications. So what we're going to do is we're going to select the data center, and under actions, we're going to say install policy, but this time we're going to select egress. The job will be added. And if you go now back to the policies and firewall, you can see that this policy has automatically overridden the previous policy. So basically, every time you install a new policy, it's going to override the previous. It's going to remove the previous policy, and it's going to install it on top of the last policy that you used, the global policy, to be clear. But as you can see, it kept the other rules that we allowed. So here in this case, this device now devices on LAN side can only access resources or external traffic using only the ports that we defined as egress. Yeah, so this is also an example. This was an example of egress filtering. With that, let's do a small let's recap of what we did today. So we showed basically how security firewall works. Security firewall has two parts, which is the firewall policies and the device-specific policies. And this is where you can have both combine specific firewall policies and specific, you can define specific device-specific rules and global policies. So the global policy, which is the policy which you can install on multiple devices at the same time to prevent the repetitive work of configuring this one device by one device. You can configure a global policy and then install it to 20 sites in just in the same way using the action menu as just with one. Doesn't matter. Yeah, so basically we covered also how outbound rules work, how inbound rules work. We showed an examples of each of those, and especially we focused also on the port forwarding and one-to-one NAT. And yeah, with that, I think we can begin to close this session. I hope it was informative. So yeah, we will be uploading this video later today. And thank you for watching.